Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to my Iron Man series. The series where we do PVM, PvP, we craft, we gather, all to work towards an 8.3 set without ever using the auction house. With a lot of discoveries made, and a lot of lives lost, this is how the story continues. What is up, you guys? My name is Balkusa, and welcome to a brand new video. I told you guys that there was a pretty decent possibility that I would be doing 115 dungeons this week, and I did it. So, there's going to be actually two parts to this video because it was a lot of content that I had to burn through. I haven't actually played a lot of Albion in this last month, but this week I really just sat down and did a lot of shit. So, needless to say, there's going to be a lot to cover, and I polled you guys. I had over 300 votes, and you guys voted for the fact that I should probably upload two separate videos, one for the PVM and one for the PvP. And so, I'm going to be going ahead and talking about the PvP to get the interesting stuff out of the way first, mostly because in the PVM video, I will be showing the entire loot tab, talking about the highlights, some of the items that I'm really happy that I got, and stuff like that. But some of the items that I'm happy about getting are also items that I received from doing the PvP in this episode. So, I'm going to be talking about all the different kills, and let me tell you, you guys are going to be proud of me. I got a lot of kills this episode, and pretty decent ones at that. So one of the things I'm going to go ahead and outright say right here is that I actually gave myself a little bit of incentive to try to do PvP, and I did this by saying, for every player that I killed, I wouldn't have to do a dungeon. And I knew I probably wouldn't get that very many, like a large amount of kills, you know what I mean? Because I didn't expect that to happen. I ended up pulling about 10 kills this episode, which is pretty damn good, and I'm really, really happy about it. And also, if you didn't already read the title of the video, we ended up over tripling our previous episode's PvP combat fame, which means that we've done a lot of PvP this week. Considering this video happened in the course of this week, right? In the last 3 months, probably, I've tripled the amount in a single week. And a lot of it was because I was just kind of bored, and I did a lot of corrupted dungeons in the beginning, and then I kind of tapered off towards the end because I wanted to finish the dungeons and just get it all done with, you know what I mean? So basically, in the beginning of this video, we did a ton of PvP, but also while we were doing the dungeons in the red zone, we had a lot of encounters with players. Some of them were meh, some of them were, you know, I could get away, or I killed them. Most of the time I killed them, or most of the time I scared them off. So, generally, it went really, really well. I only died once this video, and I died to mobs while being chased in a corrupted dungeon, and the mobs kept tagging him. And so if I actually go to my death thing, where it shows the deaths that I had to players, I actually don't see that death from this week because I clicked die before he could execute me. And he was a nature healer, so honestly, he deserved it. But either way, beside the point, essentially, I died once this video, and it was with really garbage gear because I take pretty shit stuff into Corrupteds overall because I have the IP, you know, and the IP cap is pretty low. So if I have like 1,000 IPs about where I end up capping out, so why would I take an item that's 1,400 IP into a place where I can only have 1,000 anyway? It's not really worth it. And so I was taking tier 6 swords, tier 4, like 4.1 armor, and stuff like that. So it wasn't good stuff, and I got a lot for doing it. So very low risk if I die, very high reward with some of the kills that I got. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the kills, and let's talk about some of the stuff that I did. Alright, so for the first engagement, we actually ended up getting fought by this guy who has bolt casters, and he also has guardian boots and a demon helm with a cleric robe. Pretty nice build, although I was a little worried about fighting this guy for the, like, you know, at the beginning of this because I wasn't entirely sure how to play against this. We ended up clashing. I ended up kind of running away for a while, mostly because I wanted to try to find a mob to start stacking my heroic charges on so I could actually start the fight with an E if possible. Basically, the long short of our first engagement, because this was not the last engagement, was actually that I ended up basically wasting my cleric robe ability. I should have used it whenever he started channeling his E with the bolt casters, and I didn't. I ended up getting chunked for the majority of my HP, so I had to disengage. He had guardian boots, though. He had absolutely no mobility and no possible way to keep up with me, which is one of the reasons why I don't like taking them into corrupted dungeons, because you have no way to escape or to chase down if the person tries to flee. I realized my first mistake with this fight. So one of the first things that I did was I didn't eat my omelet, so I didn't have the CDR. I wasted my cleric robe R, and I wanted to give this shot basically another shot. So I ended up clearing this room that had a crystal in it, lost a bit of health here, but that's fine. I didn't also use my healing potion, but that's probably good because I only had one anyway from a kill that I got earlier. I cleared the room. I started using this crystal to get his attention, letting him know where I am, but I was also using it to hold my heroic charge stacks so I could again engage this fight with an E right off the bat. and that's exactly what I did. He ended up using his Guardian Boots here, which ended up saving him a pretty decent amount of HP. We still chunked him for roughly 20% of his health, which is massive. Absolutely love it. And this fight was making me pretty nervous because it looks like I was losing pretty bad for a minute here until I got this absolutely massive parry. Even after this parry, I was still a little skeptical as to what I wanted to do here, but I had a healing potion popped, and now you guys get to guess, what did Bakusa do? Now, I know a lot of you guys may not be familiar with me, but if you were, you probably would have picked A, but you'd be wrong. The answer was C, and I ended up running back in and hitting him with my E, almost killing him instantly, bringing the fight back from a near loss, pulling plus 17,000 infamy and a bunch of fame, along with this gorgeous loot pile that is going to help us out in the future with some silver. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right into the next fight. So basically, I ended up engaging with my E as I tried to do most of the time, but I ended up missing, which really definitely hurt me in this fight. I ended up starting to lose, and I was like, you know what, okay, this guy's pretty strong, I'm not doing a ton of damage here, I'm going to go ahead and try to back off. And then I looked at his build. This guy's build is actually kind of crazy. And while I can understand the whole premise of this build, it wasn't a build that I was very comfortable with fighting, and so I just went ahead and said, this guy, he's fucking insane, I'm just going to go ahead and try and disengage, and my whole goal was to clear crystals, and I was going to clear crystals, until something nice happened, and he made a very fatal mistake. This guy was chasing me through the entire dungeon. I used the fact that I had dual swords to keep my distance, even though that we had the same boots. Soldier boots have very long cooldown, and I knew that I would be able to keep away because I used my boots first, and so my boots are going to be off of cooldown before his were, so I knew I was going to be able to escape if I wanted to. And then the guy decided to just go ahead and follow me through this magma Memphit, and I decided I pretty much have no choice now. If I'm going to fight him at any point, this is the point that I have to fight him in, and I did. This man's ends up almost getting away from me. I didn't use my boots as early as I should have, and he would have almost gotten away with a sliver of health, but of course, we both had soldier boots. He used his first, mine were off of cooldown, I was using dual swords, he wasn't going to get away from me. I ended up using this to my advantage, of course, with the magma Memphit, being able to pull this pretty nice kill. Unfortunately, we did not receive the 4.3 taproot, which I was really looking forward to getting, but unfortunately, we did not. And this is one of the kills of the video where I actually ended up just lucking out. I was chasing this guy through the dungeon. His goal was to clear crystals, and he didn't actually fight me. I looked at this guy's build. This guy really should have killed me. I don't really know why he didn't attempt to fight me. Maybe he didn't have access to the icicle on the permafrost prism, like the one with the third E, the third Q, where he can, you know, spam that shit and it's just absolutely stupid damage. I don't know if he just didn't do that. And honestly, he just refused to fight me. So I basically chased this guy down through the dungeon, and I mean narrowly, died. Like he almost got out. Like I was very, very close to losing this kill, but fortunately for us, we were able to pull it off pretty quickly. We stayed on him pretty well because, you know, we have the soldier boots. He's not going to be able to get away from us, and it looks like he had already pretty much used most of his mobility because he doesn't really have any of it. And so we were able to clean up this kill, getting ourselves a nice set of armor and a beautiful permafrost 5.1. The problem was, though, that the mobs kept aggroing on me, and I actually almost ended up not getting the loot and dying to the mobs. I wasn't able to kill this mob fast enough, so I just decided I was just going to go ahead and just tank the mob, get knocked, but I ended up grabbing all the loot before I died to the creep, so it wasn't a big deal. Either way, it was pretty close. Happy that I got it all. Here he is. Fuck. Yes, got him. Nice. Carving sword, a tier 8 helmet. So since this video is actually going to be rather short just because this is mostly just the PvP, and I did a decent amount of it, but I'm not going to really be making a 25-minute video on it, of course, because I don't really think all of the PvP I did was super interesting. I mean, I could put it in there, and I might, but either way. This guy, I kind of feel bad, because I know for a fact he should have seen me at least 3 times in this dungeon whenever I was trying to dive him. Furthermore, I also flagged up a solid minute and a half before I actually engaged him in combat. I ended up killing this guy, and he was trying to de-aggro the mobs here, and the way he did it just makes me think that he probably isn't very experienced, and I wanted to apologize because, like, I don't know really what was going on with this guy. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but he should have seen me 3 times over. He had shrines almost the entire way through this dungeon. He was constantly getting the solo dungeon shrines. He should have turned around and fought me whenever he saw that there was a hostile in his dungeon. I guess he just wasn't paying attention, or maybe he was distracted. But yeah, I'm sorry to this guy, but we have a couple of other kills, and I want to talk about this guy just a little bit because he's definitely interesting. So yes, while I was doing these dungeons, if I ever saw somebody going into a dungeon, I would usually attempt to dive. There was one single person that I went in on, and I saw his gear, and I was like, I even typed out to him, I was like, yeah, okay, fair enough, and I left because he was like 1300 IP. I just didn't want to fight it. But other than that, I pretty much dove whenever I could. I did fail one dive, and I left one because I just didn't want to, fight him. But this guy was very interesting to me, and I have to respect this guy a lot. He actually had a pretty decent amount of spec, and I'll mention that later. But I flagged up to kill him, and after I killed him, I was in another dungeon because I'll talk about that later. But basically, I was flagged up, I was in another dungeon, right? And then while I was clearing my second dungeon, this man's tries to dive me again, already geared up in my next dungeon. And like, I ended up almost dying because he caught me at a bad time. I escaped, I fought him again, I killed him, he said GF. Like, this guy, he's a legend, right? And then I'll just let past me talk about this. Okay, so I actually have to make a comment on this, otherwise I would just feel terrible. So, while I was out on my trip, you guys saw that I had a couple of kills, and they were actually on the same guy. This Pesadello guy, however you say his name, he's a fucking legend, okay? And let me tell you why this guy is a legend, okay? So, he's going around, I caught him in one of these dungeons. He was clearing a dungeon, right, with this build, and he's using a one-hand holy staff, right? And so he was going around using smite. Like, first off, what a guy, because that was a terrible idea. That must have taken him a literal eternity. He has 1026 average IP. With, like, this setup, he has to have a decent amount of, like, specs. So, what a guy. And then, after, I went into the dungeon to kill him, to do my dungeon, because I had a map, and then he was in my dungeon. At least I thought it was my dungeon. And so I killed him, realized it wasn't my dungeon. And then I go into my dungeon, right after I killed him and finished that dungeon, I went into my dungeon. And then he came into my dungeon and died to me again. Within the span of a solid 7 minutes, this guy geared up twice, died to me twice, and then as I was running around outside about to leave because my inventory is full to the brim right now, I saw him already geared up again, fighting to the death with a bunch of gankers. And I would have helped because he's a man of myth, but unfortunately my inventory is just so full and I just couldn't be asked to stop. So I'm sorry, Pesadello, if you're watching this, man, you're a legend. I have to admit, like, you are unwavering loyalty to that one-hand holy staff. So what a guy. Alrighty, so here is the loot from all the players that I killed this episode. However, there is one kill that I did not get on recording, and unfortunately, it was the biggest one that I got fame-wise. However, I will have a screenshot on here for you guys that will show you the guy that I killed for a pretty hefty amount of 159,000 combat fame. It was a beautiful kill, and a lot of people wondered how I won it in the Discord channel whenever I posted it, because I was rather excited. Basically, this guy ended up coming in, diving me. It was incredibly instant. He basically caught me at a really bad time. I wasn't paying attention, and I didn't get a chance to record. However, I got a red shrine from a solo dungeon, and ended up basically being able to outrun him, and I dodged his bear paws E, and so I didn't have any issues taking him down. It was a rather close fight, but for a rather close fight whenever he was using the build that he was using, I feel like that means I did pretty okay. I kited him very, very well. My gear was rather low IP. I didn't even have like a 4.2 Scholar Howl, which I should have, but I didn't. either way, that was the biggest kill of the episode as far as fame goes, and I didn't actually get it on recording, which makes me a little sad, but whatever you can, I'm sorry if you don't believe it. I don't know what to tell you. It was a very interesting and very scary fight because he was very powerful, but I dodged his Barrapazi because I had the movement speed bonuses, but here it all is. All of the loot from the players that I killed this episode. 5 new mounts, absolutely beautiful. Some pretty low tier ones, but I also did get an armored horse. Also ended up getting just a bunch of capes, which are always very, very expensive. Some interesting boots. I did get a carving sword, which I might end up using at some point. But yes, I'm very happy. 2.4 million silver from the players that we ended up taking out this episode. That is very exciting. So we're going to go ahead and toss that all back into my loot tab. And then I will show you guys the loot tab and other notable things that happened this week in the next video. I hope you all enjoyed. I love you guys, and I will see you in probably a few days with the next episode.